84, isn't it? Page 84. So we've had A, B and C, isn't it? A, B and C.
Yeah.
Okay, so each of these are interrelated, so we could move them as a group, really, couldn't we?
Just need to talk about C because it's quite different.
Oh, okay, right.
So-
Okay, then we'll put them separately.
So A and B are interrelated, but C is about a specific issue to a countryside living subdivision in Caldwell's Road in Whitford. All countryside living areas have a specific table about the minimum site size and average site size. This has been left off in Caldwell Road from the recommended version of the panel. What has been recommended is what was agreed with the submitter, Camperdown Holdings Limited, at mediation. We are not clear why it was not included in the subdivision table, but for the countryside living area and that area to work, it needs a minimum site size and a minimum average. So we are recommending that we need to put that into the table relating to that particular area in Whitford.
Okay, sounds like more technical than policy, so I think we get that. Okay, now councillors, for A and B, do we have a mover for A and B? They've been moved and seconded already? Good, thank you. Okay, so that's Councillor Darby and Councillor Lee. And in terms of item C, I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Second, Councillor Ross, thank you. Okay, so we'll move item A and B together.
By division, please.
By division.
No, it's the rules within the thing.
So A and B by division. Your Worship,
Aye.
Councillor and I,
Aye.
Councillor Brewer,
No.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Councillor Clow,
Yes.
Councillor Cooper. Yes. Councillor Darby,
Four.
Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Hall,
Aye.
Councillor Crum,
For
Councillor Lee,
Aye.
Councillor Penrose,
No.
Councillor Quacks.
No.
Councillor Stewart. No. Councillor Sir John Walker.
Four.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Councillor Webster.
No.
Councillor Wood.
No.
11-6.
Okay, thank you. That is past 11:06, and then we'll go to C. We'll just move that on. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you. Now the closing. I'll move the closing cover-all. Seconder for that, please, Councillor Penny H. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, councillors. Right, moving swiftly on. The Waitakere Ranges. Oh, damn.
Because
Same.
Licence and Trust have properties
right,
in Titirangi precinct.
Oh, I bet they got a lot. Right. See you later, Westies.
Well, not all of them.
Okay, so this is Auckland's, this is the report topic 075 Waitakere Ranges. In terms of the approach that the panel has taken to the Waitakere Ranges, it is a different approach to what was in the notified plan, but many of the rules and standards that they're recommending are consistent with the council's position, apart from what is set out in A and F. But I'll just explain the difference in the approach. So in terms of the Waitakere Ranges and the notified version of the unitary plan, the Waitakere Ranges area that is subject to the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Act had a precinct over it, so it had a large precinct with sub-precincts in it, which really recommended the same provisions that existed in the legacy Waitakere section of the Auckland District Plan, but dealt with some of the issues that have been raised over time with the implementation of those rules. What the panel has recommended instead is that they do not believe there should be a precinct over the Waitakere Ranges area, Instead, they've identified 2 new zones that are to apply to the Waitakere Ranges area. One is called Waitakere Ranges Zone, and one is called the Waitakere Foothills Zone. They have also put an overlay over those 2 zones, which they believe bring out the nuances that is needed to reflect the different competing interests that exist within the Waitakere Ranges, but keep them within what was expected from the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Act. So in terms of going through the different areas which are, when you weigh up the precinct, the overlay and the zones together, many of the things are the same. Officers have just identified A to F as being different, and we think we need to raise them to your attention. The first is that our case at the hearing was that there would be prohibited activity status for subdivision in the Waitakere Ranges area. The panel is recommending non-complying activity status. That's a very similar approach that they've taken across the whole of the region, where we had recommended prohibited activity status for subdivision, i.e. in the rural zones that we just talked about. They have shifted it to non-complying. The staff are recommending you accept that shift. They believe that there are still provisions within the new zones and the overlay that retain the protection that was sought to subdivision, and they do not believe that this will enable subdivision to go through without proper and due assessment against the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Act. So that's the first issue. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Penny?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just for the sake of transparency, and because, you know, this is a big issue in the West, can we just explain the difference between prohibited and non-complying and the thresholds involved? I mean, prohibitive speaks for itself, but I think there's a concern out there in the ranges that somehow non-complying is open slather for subdivision and the death by 1,000 cuts would eventuate.
Prohibited activity status means you can't undertake that activity unless a plan changes the rules in a district plan. Non-complying is a required resource consent, so you have to apply for a resource consent. It is I suppose at the higher, you have a higher level to overcome. If you think of all of the resource consents you can go for in a district plan, you've got restricted discretionary, you've got discretionary, and then at the higher levels is non-complying. You do need to convince the person assessing your application that you are not against the objectives and policies of that particular zone, and also that there will be no more than a minor effect if you undertake that activity. And in terms of the objectives and policies that have been proposed by the panel for the 2 zones in that area, they do set out the purposes that the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Act is trying to achieve. So the bar is set really high in terms of subdivision if somebody went for a subdivision consent in those areas. So for that reason, that's why officers are recommending you accept the recommendations of the panel.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I guess the hard part is during the structure plan debates, and I think Councillor Lee will remember, you know, for those of us involved right on the ground with the whole Waitakere Ranges debate, the whole issue of prohibited activity did draw that line in the sand that said we don't even expect that there will be applications for subdivision. So I understand what we're saying, and for those people who understand planning speak well, that, you know, there is some degree of security if the recommendation indeed goes through. uncomfortable about the removal of prohibited activity status, simply because as we monitor the impact of change on the ranges, it's becoming increasingly hard to maintain the thresholds that we expected when the Act was passed. So personally, I'm not comfortable with that, but I do understand if it does go ahead, the issues behind the thinking.
Councillor Mike?
Yes, I largely agree with Councillor Holtz, except that I do believe that retention of prohibited activity did provide or does provide a large degree of certainty. It's a tool that is certainly statutory, it's in the Act, it's in practice applied very, very sparingly indeed. And in this case, very appropriately, given the national importance of the Waitakere Ranges, this legislation that covers the ranges and which the plan refers to or was informed by, went through a great deal of debate and litigation over many, many years, if I recall, but agreement was finally settled, and I think the council is obliged, of course, to reflect or take into account the special nature of the legislation, and I believe providing that certainty against what will be a free-for-all in the sense that, okay, the panel has raised the bar in terms of applications. The panel has decided on a bar which is high, but not as high as it was before. Let me put it that way. But crucially, it has opened the door for subdivisions, which may or may not succeed. But what they will do is totally unsettle the harmony and the consensus that has existed in the ranges by and large since this legislation was enacted. And I think it would be a mistake, I believe, to go back from the position we've had in the notified plan, because it will lower the protection of the ranges, no doubt about that, but probably even more damaging, there will be a great deal of uncertainty and disharmony that will come out of this.
Councillor Bill?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Things have moved on a bit since this Act was passed, because it also includes quite substantial amounts of lands in the foothills that used to be viable orchards, viable cropping operations, and as time has moved, they are no longer so. And these people, even if they do good environmental works, can't create a subdivision via an SCA potential. They do a wetland work they can't create. They are caught. The bar is and has been too high for some time. There is not vast swathes of land that is potential for subdivision. It is not opening a bar or opening floodgates. There is still a high level of quality and approval work that has to be attained before you get a subdivisional right. I'll just re-emphasise again, we have moved on from where the Act was when it was written, and we need some more common sense rules for a new time.
Yep.
Okay. Any further speakers? Right. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Bill, would you like to move it? Do I have a seconder?
Pleasure.
I'll second it.
Councillor Penny W. Is there any further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Note that. So that was A, B and C, because they were in a conglomerate there. Now, just looking at D.
So really, B, C and D refers to the to the new approach that the
Yeah,
panel is recommending to the Waitakere Rangers. So instead of having a precinct, they've recommended the deletion of the precinct, but they've
That's all I will do.
inserted 2 new rural zones, which is the Waitakere Rangers zone and the Waitakere Rangers foothills, and they are applying an overlay to the whole of the Waitakere Rangers to pick up some of the nuances that were in the previous precinct.
so that's B, C and D. Okay,
Perhaps, do you want me to talk about E and S, because they might...
yep, okay, perhaps can I just have the can I say movers for those two? Yep. Yep, no, sorry, I actually meant 1, 2 and 3 under A. So we need to do B, C and
D.